Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about some changes that are coming up in 0.3 for Path of Exile 2. We know a couple things that are coming, or at least have been kind of teased. There may be the later three acts coming in, or at least one of them, because they have been teasing them with the Chinese interview that Jonathan Rogers did. So that could happen. We don't know whether or not it's actually confirmed or not. It hasn't been confirmed, but we do know they said it's sooner than you think. So what does that exactly mean? No one really knows. But there's a possibility that the at least one of or all of the later three acts come into the game and they remove Cruel from the game. That would be a massive boon for the game because of course the enemy variety gets better, maps get better because they can use better tiles from other regions in the acts. They can use the rest of the bosses that are from the acts that they can't use right now due to being like spoilers, so there will be less repetitiveness. Um, do I think that a massive update to the end game will happen, as in like the systems? No, not really, because they have said that this patch is more focused on the balance side of things, so I don't know if they've had the time to redo all of the end game. So I wouldn't expect a massive shakeup in terms of what the end game is. So, of course, if you don't really like the end game all that much, then I don't really know if there's going to be a massive in game shakeup, other than, of course, just balance. They've said that they plan on redoing aspects of a lot of the ascendancies that are underperforming, especially Chronomancer, Acolyte of Chayala, Pathfinder maybe. It hasn't really been played a whole lot. Witch Hunter, I like Witch Hunter. I think it's niche, but I like it. It just needs a bit. It's buffs. I think there's a massive problem with basically all of the ascendancies, and that's really the fact that there's a lot of downsides to all the ascendancies, and the upsides that you get from each ascendancy don't feel like they are compensating for the downsides. And I think that's kind of a thing across PoE2's skill trees in general, is that especially for like the warrior side of the tree, it feels like when they first made it, they were really trying to go for this yin and yang kind of, you get an increase, but you also get a decrease kind of thing. And a lot of the time, it just feels really bad, especially since you're stacking. Again, the best example being the warrior, and most, if not all, of its attack speed related nodes, or a lot of its nodes in general, have attack speed reductions. On top of it, the only weapon available to them being the two-handed mace, or the mace in general, which is already the slowest of the weapons. So that's a lot of the reason why the warrior doesn't feel great early on, or any of its iterations feel great. Now, the Smith of Katava, it's new in Dawn of the Hunt, so it saw pretty good use, I would say. And it was pretty good. Obviously, it had a couple meme Quinn builds where you early on where that one forging skill that added fire to your attacks took forever and only lasted for the number of hits that you hit, and it was atrocious. But I do believe they fixed that, or they plan to fix that. I think one of the massive shakeups is going to just be ascendancies. Balance is going to be much better, hopefully, this league, or at least iterated on in this league. I honestly even think, even though you see Blood Mage here as something of one of the top 3 usages, I think it still needs quite a bit of love. Now, I'll switch over to the Witch, to Blood Mage, and look, I like the Blood Mage's thematic I like the thematic nature of the Blood Mage, but I think this being the only option that you have is bad. I don't like being forced into picking something that has a downside this bad. And I know you can mitigate it and there are ways around it. I get that, but it just doesn't feel good in my opinion. And obviously, since it's 12% of the top player base, because of course PoE Ninja really only covers the top percentile of the people in the game that play the game, enough people got over this hurdle to make it a much more played class in this league, top 3. But that doesn't mean that it's not bad. I just don't like this. It it's hard to describe how much I dislike it. It forces you to cover for something that you really shouldn't have to. The life remnants really don't give you back as much as they should. I just think if they keep this the way it is, it needs to be changed in some way, making it a better choice overall. I don't think that having a massive downside like this should be the very first node, and there's no way to avoid it. It shoehorns builds into certain things, and that means every Blood Mage has to figure a way to get around or cover this cost that they didn't have to before. So, I don't know. Obviously, people have made Blood Mage builds that work and that are great, but I have to wonder that if this changed in some significant way, would those builds be better? Obviously, but would the builds that are made on the Blood Mage be made better elsewhere because of this massive cost? I don't know that, to be totally honest, but I think that that would be mostly true in a lot of cases. Otherwise, I mean, for the most part, the rest of this tree is pretty good. Sunder the Flesh is great. Obviously, it's basically a Sandstorm Visage, I think that's what it's called. The helmet from Sanctum in the first game, but it gives 5% even more base critical chance for spells. So if you're going crit strike, this Ascendancy is amazing for you because it just gives you just a massive buff. And you almost always have just a crazy amount of life on the Blood Mage. But the problem is your spells cost so much that it's hard to just go into that and not be like, well, the downside is too much, so I'm going to go something else, even though I'm losing out on all this damage and all this crit life quality of life that you could be having. Infernalist is another one that probably needs some changes too. I think all of them across the board need some changes. Some are better than others. I generally do like the Tactician, even though it didn't get too much play this league. It got 2%, even though it was one of the newer ones, so it was actually the worst of the new Ascendancies to come into the game. This was the build that I made, a Artillery Ballista Tactician. I think Watch How I Do It needs to be changed and made better. I think that Cannons Ready needs to remove the... They did change it to where Cannons Ready now works with Artillery Ballista. There was a bug where if you took this, your Artillery Ballista wouldn't fire when you fired because it wasn't counting them as a projectile. Or it wasn't counting Siege Cascade as a projectile, so it wouldn't fire. And since I was using Siege Cascade, and a lot of people are using Siege Cascade due to the pinning nature of the Tactician, that's what it was. But I'm fairly certain that Watch How I Do It is either bugged or just needs to be changed, because as it stands right now, I don't think anybody takes it, and will, at least with Ballista builds. And obviously with a Ballista in the actual artwork and stuff like that, I feel like it should work with Ballistas. Now, I can see that, like, as you can see, the thematic here is that the branch goes up to this guy right here. You see the artwork, how the artwork kind of... This is, I guess, it's saying, like, hey, if you play, like, a minion build with this guy, you can take Watch How I Do It. And you're not really meant to take it with the Ballista side. Maybe I'm looking in too much into the artwork, but it seems like that's what they're kind of trying to imply visually, is... This doesn't work with Ballistas because it's on the other side, but I feel like it should. Like, I feel like this should give some kind of bonus to Ballistas. The whole Ascendancy feels like it's supposed to be like the Ballista Ascendancy, and it doesn't. This doesn't work for it. So I don't know. Otherwise, I like this Ascendancy a lot. It makes Siege Cascade amazing, because basically you're pinning everything all the time, and this node right here makes it to where your pins are basically freeze, but not actually being freeze, and that makes it amazing. These nodes, not worth it. Not worth it at all. They're really not, especially not this one. This one needs to be gutted and either completely like buffed or completely changed. I don't know any reason why you would actually take it. I'm fairly certain somebody literally did the math and said that while you do get some benefits in the mid game, overall you're basically better off not spending the 2 ascendancy points, because by the time you're really utilizing it, you're past the point of its usefulness, because it only really works for the middle game where you are defending with more armor. It's basically giving you bigger number, but the percentage you're reducing and evading is the same. Um, but the bigger number matters because the number is what the formulas use as a statistic to reduce things, to reduce damage, physical damage, and evading. So, or at least in terms of armor, that's the way it works. Is the number is what's used, not the percentage. So, in theory, the having double the armor, quadruple the armor, whatever it is, 200% of the armor means that you have a way bigger number to actually take the hit. Meaning, it should, in theory, be better at dealing with those mid-range to small hits, but that's what armor does already, and it sucks. Nobody uses it. So, because of that, and the fact that it nerfs your evasion only at 50%, I just don't like it. It feels like a waste of 2 points. I haven't used Unleash Hell. I genuinely haven't. If it's good or not, it probably is. I don't see many people using it. It seems kind of like its own thing where you might be able to make a build out of it, but I don't see it. I haven't looked into how many builds use Unleash Hell. I don't think too many do. It might not do enough damage. It might have too big a cooldown. I don't know, but having an entire 2 skills that are just based just this, I don't know, man. It doesn't feel strong enough. Just having a skill that kind of is lackluster. If there's a skill, it should be worthy of being picked as 2 points. And wasting 2 points on this on basically any build probably isn't going to be the play, especially if they fix some of the other parts, like Watch How I Do It, not working with ballistas. Of course, since ballistas don't work off of minion skill tags, this doesn't work because this scales off minion skill tags. So if you're not using minions in that way, then you're not using this. But nobody seems to be using this ascendancy for minions, because there are other ascendancies that seem to do it better. So you get these tools that are meant to be used with minions instead of ballistas, and it just seems like nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to use this guy for that overall, because the obvious choice is going ballistas with him, especially since he has this pinning tech, which is you always go this. Your first 4 points are always this, the pinning, because it's too strong. The pinning is the strongest part of this whole class, and it's fully defensive. Everything else is pretty lackluster. The persistent buffs have 50% reservation is amazing. This is basically your Mercy Lab, and then your 4th lab is kind of up to you, to be totally honest. For a while, if you need more defense, Polish That Gear is really good, but not good enough in my opinion. Once they fixed Cannons Ready, it's pretty good, but overall you have some choices. I wish Watch How I Do It worked, but yeah. Anyway, that's it. Witch Hunter, one of the least played builds in the game, basically right above the Chronomancer. I think that's just because the big thing that it has going for it is the explosions you get wherever the explosions are, and he's a boss killer. The free culling strike, decimating strike. This, I don't think weapon swaps are popular enough for even this to be a thing. This whole side needs to be changed completely, because it's just not. It's not doing the job, because people don't use weapon swaps. Maybe that's because we're dumb and we haven't figured out how to use them properly yet, or at least I haven't, but it's not widely used is what I'm talking about. So this needs to be changed to something that will be better used. As I see it right now, this is a very underutilized part of his kit, and because of that, you have less choices to take, meaning he's just going to be less played. The less choices on an ascendancy you have to pick from, the less people are going to use them, because PoE thrives on build variety, and knocking off 2 points off an entire ascendancy means it's not going to happen. Basically, everybody's picks are Witchbane, No Mercy, Obsessive Rituals, and Ceremony Ablution. ablation, however you say that. That's what you go, because this gives you your offense, this gives you your defense. There you go. Or you take away this, you go Zealous Inquisition and then Obsessive Ritual, which nerfs your damage a bit, but whatever, you know. You get the explosions. That is the choice on here. He is a one-trick pony where you get some damage because of the concentration hit, and the concentration also gives a little bit of a defensive buff, allowing making enemy cooldowns go down by a decent bit. And then once you get your the No Mercy, that gives you a lot more damage. But the fact that this is like such a heavy window to do, because you have to get their concentration missing, and there isn't really a good way of doing it other than just shooting. So it just makes too much of a window, I feel like. It makes building around the Witch Hunter very difficult compared to its brother in the Gemling Legionnaire. It's made to be more of a all-rounding build, and people have obviously taken to it pretty well. So I would just like to see these two, basically their variety increased, because as I see it right now, the Mercenaries 2 Ascendancies, other than the Gemling Legionnaire, they are good in niches, but they don't do anything aside from their niche. And I mean, while niches are okay, this whole game is built on build variety. So if you have things where, well, they do good at one thing and one thing only, obviously not very many people are going to play them. I think the skill tree as a whole gets a good revamp. I don't know if they're going to be adding things, removing things, changing things around. I think I've seen some hints towards that, but I wouldn't rule out the fact that an entire passive tree like mix up, especially for the warrior side of the tree, where they've said themselves that they no longer subscribe to the idea that every buff needs to have a nerf with it. I don't know if it'll be completely removed like that, but the fact that they've already come out and said, yeah, we don't like the fact that so many of the warrior nodes have some kind of downside to them, like reduced attack speed, reduced attack speed, reduced attack speed. Those are just the first three I can find. Like, so many of this guy's stuff has reduced attack speed, and it's ridiculous. It's hard to get around it. Because maces are meant to be the big, oh, boom, you hit one time and it destroys screens. But that's not really how PoE 2 works. So it just doesn't feel good. So I think at least a tree mix-up for the warrior side is probably coming. If not, the entire tree getting a little bit of a makeover. And if that happens, I know there's speculation of the druid coming into the game. I don't know if it's going to be totally honest. I think they've kind of been hinting at the fact that if it doesn't come in, it doesn't come in. I would be pretty surprised if the druid made it, to be totally honest. I think it's going to be either several ascendancies buffed and the tree changed a bit, or the druid and some axe. I don't think it'll be both. Maybe the axe come in with it. Maybe the axe ascendancy changes, tree changes, and then the skill buffs that they planned. Though that's one big package. For like skill buffs is in like making it to where skills that are meant to be put into combos are no longer just meant to be put in combos. They're now changing the philosophy in the way they design skills to make it to where if before they were saying if this is a combo skill it doesn't need to be good on its own, now they're saying yes, it does need to be good on its own. The problem is that these combo pieces need to be good on their own and have a way of building them where it makes sense to be on their own. That way, when you do make a combo with them, it feels satisfying instead of feeling like a wet noodle and feeling like you do need to use the entire combo to make one good damage move, you know? Nobody wants to feel that in an ARPG. You don't want to feel like you're having to press a billion different buttons to do that. And I think the Chronomancer and Acolyte of Chalula are the two definite answers for who are the most needed of a ascendancy change for sure. Pathfinder's low, but I think it's mainly because there's just not a lot of good ways to like use her yet that people have found. A lot of the skills are just not utilizing poison, and poison seems kind of lackluster. So, and the other shit that she can do just isn't good enough, in my opinion. So, she gets outshined, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. She gets outshined by other things. Obviously, she, the fucking, what's her name? The warden? No, the huntress. What the hell? Anyway, the huntress is amazing. She's probably going to get some nerfs, I would imagine. Tactician definitely needs some buffs, needs some love. Not as much as the other two, the others I've mentioned so far, but definitely needs some love. Witch Hunter definitely needs some love. Like I was saying, Gemling Legionnaire is basically fine. It's been nerfed several times and still being used pretty well, so that's good. All the warrior stuff needs to kind of be changed other than Smith of Katava. I think Smith of Katava is a great ascendancy, but I think the problem isn't in the ascendancies for the warrior, it's in the tree itself, where they start. This is the problem, not the ascendancies. I maybe some minor ascendancy like number buffs, but other than that, I think the tree itself needs to be changed. Obviously there isn't any ascendancy for Strength Int. Blood Mage definitely needs some love. I know a lot of people are using it's the third most played top ascendancy, but that's because I feel like it's skewed. The people who are on PoE 2 Ninja are the veterans, the people that stick around for the longest period of time and learn how to play these ascendancies. So this class is a high skill ceiling class, but it's very anti-new player, like, because the cost feels so high, too high to cover. So if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to build around making this a usable thing, especially since the tech for a lot of builds is to just ignore your first ascendancy until later down the line. That shouldn't be a thing. You shouldn't have to ignore your first ascendancy points because it's literally the only two. If your first lab literally has to be Sanguimancy, you get no other choices. That should not be a thing. Should not be a thing. So at very least, give us another option here. Lich is amazing. I'm fairly certain a lot of people have been using it, so that's fine. Chronomancer absolutely needs some love. I think they put too much emphasis on just like the skills she could use and her little time shenanigans, and I think she just needs a bit more of like an identity to her other than just like lowering the cooldown of cast speed, since it already doesn't feel great to spam those spells anyway, and you really can't all that well unless you're using like cast on shenanigans like that, like we used to do in the very first patch with the freeze stuff. She just doesn't feel good enough, just in general. The move she does get doesn't compensate for the fact that you're not really getting much stats out of her other than just cooldown, you know? So that's what needs to change with her. Just give her more stats, more oomph to her, other than just, yeah, I can mess with time a bit, you know? It feels gimmicky. It feels too gimmicky. The whole thing feels too gimmicky. It's a cool concept, but it feels too gimmicky. Obviously, we may also get some new ascendancies. If we don't get a class, we may get a couple new ascendancies for some of the classes. I don't know. I don't want to like concrete that down, but it wouldn't be astounding to me to get a couple new ascendancies added to the game if we don't get the druid. If we get the druid, probably no new ascendancies. That's an either or thing. Either we get the druid or we get 2 new ascendancies or something like that after the changes, or we just get a bunch of reworked ascendancies. I think they've already said that they may not be adding ascendancies, but they may be new in terms of like the reworked ones. But anyway, that's me done rambling for now. Those are some of the changes I think are going to happen. As a recap, just a massive change to the tree, not Atlas, to the skill tree would be very amazing. Several ascendancies need a lot of love in terms of like what they can do and how easy it is to build with them. And obviously, the skills are hard to predict and say, but Lightning Spear is going to get nerfed, obviously. Either that, or they nerf this a bit, or they bring other skills up to Lightning Spear's levels. I would not mind if they kept Lightning Spear basically the same, but brought everything else up to feeling similar to the Lightning Spear in terms of like ease of use. That feels like it should be right. Of course, there are some outliers where it might be a bit too powerful, so GG has the discretion to adjust those levers as they see fit. But I think that is absolutely what they need to do. Bring things up to Lightning Spear's level. Don't bring Lightning Spear down too much. But I do feel like they might nerf Lightning Spear, or at very least spears in general. My build, the Tactician, Artillery Ballista Tactician, I could see getting some more buffs. I think it is a pretty good skill, especially since it got some buffs last league too. I don't think it's going to get as many buffs as it did last league, but if at very least I don't see it getting nerfed because it's only at 2% of the overall player base. Oh, well, no. Okay, never mind. If you're playing Tactician, you're basically playing Artillery Ballista and Siege Cascade because it just makes too much sense. So, yeah. This is what I was saying. Like, this is just too niche. But anyway, yeah. That's basically it. How many people use, Watch How I Do It is used in several. I wonder if that's because like people just don't know how to use it, or I'm curious to see these builds that use Watch How I Do It. What are they using with Watch How I Do It? Glacial Wind Dancer. This guy I think was a glacial build. I don't see it. What is he using? Oh, ancestral. Oh, it's a totem. But that doesn't work with totems. I'm fairly certain because they're not an ally. Oh, they're playing with a companion. I guess it's kind of a weird build. Anyway, anyway, I'm done for today, so thank you for listening. And if you did, I know this is kind of a rambly, ranty video, but I just wanted to say this is some of the changes that hopefully will be made to the overall game. Some of the balance changes majorly. I would really like to see just massive changes to the ascendancies, which is what they plan on doing. So I'm excited to see what they do. And obviously the movement speed stuff that they plan on adding is coming in too. So I'm excited to see the changes. I'm hoping they're some really good ones and that they are well received and that the game feels a lot better to play because I love the game already. I've loved it since day one, but every time they make a better change, make the game feel overall better, obviously more and more people will fall in love with the game, and that can never be a bad thing. So thanks, guys. Have a great day. Peace out.